On today's episode, you'll hear from a self-described chief boxologist who built a bold, purpose-driven business by rejecting bad marketing and advocating what actually works. This is the Be a Marketer podcast.
Be a Marketer.
My name is Dave Charest, Director of Small Business Success at Constant Contact, and I help small business owners like you make sense of online marketing. And on this podcast, we'll explore what it really takes to market your business, even if marketing's not your thing. No jargon, no hype, just real stories to inspire you and practical advice you can act on. So remember, friend, you can be a marketer, and at Constant Contact, we're here to help. Well, hello, friend, and thanks for joining us for another episode of the Be a Marketer podcast. Hey, as you may or may not know, every good host needs a great podcast. Guest host, co-host. What the hell did I just say?
Well, the quick way is I'm Kelsey. Hi.
Yeah. See what I mean? If she wasn't here to save me there. Yes, every good co-host needs a great. No, I did it again.
Every great co-host needs a great.
No, see?
It's every great
every good host needs a great co-host. And mine is Kelsey Carter.
That is right.
Wow.
It is me. Hello.
Hi, Kelsey.
Hi, Dave. How are you? We got there.
We got here. Thanks for going on that little journey with us.
I
folks.
do. I love a detour.
I'm glad. I'm hopeful. Hopefully, you're still here, and we can tell you about what's going on today. Kelsey, now I can't say that I've ever had one. It took me a little while to actually get into creating these little spaces online at the time. But did you ever have a MySpace profile?
I absolutely did.
Oh,
there
boy.
was a period in the around 2010-ish, I think, was my prime of using it. And yeah, that was very important, especially choosing your song, in the background when someone clicks your profile. That was the biggest thing. Everyone would be like, what's your song? What's your song?
Oh.
I would always have a Paramore song when I first started. That was always my go-to.
That seems to make sense.
Yeah, I was just, I want people to get me when they first click my profile.
Yeah, well, so like I said, I never had one. But my wife did. And I remember her spending hours on, looking at things and doing all that stuff with I don't know, didn't you have top friends and things like that too? That you
you had
a
top list, the top 8. And if your top 8 wasn't good, then no one wanted to look at your profile.
Oh boy, the internets are fun. But, I guess, in many ways, that's just even an early example of kind of, ways that you can kind of personally brand yourself online in many ways, right? And the tool that gave you the ability to choose your song, choose your backgrounds, do all of those types of things. And really before anybody was even talking about what personal branding was. And I guess, if you think about it, the way you show up, for example, even in those little ways, right? Your personal song or whatever the case may be, it really does shape how people start to think of you and even remember you. And I would say our guest today is someone who gets that pretty well. Kelsey, who's joining us today?
Today's guest is Emma Easton. She's the founder and chief bolloxologist of Business Bollox, a marketing strategy company based in the United Kingdom. Yes, the name does turn heads, Dave, and it's very hard to say.
Amongst other things, right? Yeah, it totally is.
But that's the point. Emma helps small business owners cut through the noise, ditch the one-size-fits-all advice, and focus on those things that actually move the needle.
Yeah. What I love about Emma is that her entire approach is about really stripping away the complexity and the noise to just really reveal what really matters, right? Understanding your market, listening to your audience, and then really just aligning everything with that insight. And so whether she's mentoring founders or calling out lazy subject lines, Emma really drives home the value of clarity in both thought and the actions that you take. And in 2024, she was named Entrepreneur of the Year at the Lincolnshire Marketing Awards. Her approach, I would say, is bold, honest, and rooted in one clear idea, right? As we mentioned, you need that clarity. If your audience doesn't understand you, they won't connect with you. And so I'm excited about our conversation today because you're going to hear why clarity beats cleverness in your messaging, how Emma uses her voice to attract the right clients, and the simple structure that helps her stay consistent with content. So let's go to Emma as she shares how her business has evolved from a pandemic mental exercise to something she cherishes and, frankly, would never change.
when I set this up, it was really, I thought it would just be a mental exercise right at the beginning of COVID. And I'd go back to having, as my mum calls it, a proper job, when the world got back on its axis after the pandemic. And I just thought it'd be an exercise for me to keep my brain going and maybe help some people along the way. But it's really evolved into something I absolutely love and cherish and would never change. And I've since worked with my old employers and said, thank you very much, actually, for my redundancy, because it's been the best thing ever. I don't know if I would have had the courage to go out on my own, particularly at that time. I know plenty of my contacts who did just before the pandemic and then found themselves in a pretty tricky situation. But I think there's something about how we're influenced by what we have around us. So I do quite a lot of work in schools, particularly in secondary schools, helping young adults with their kind of career choices. And I think it's really important to be mindful about how we're influenced. So my parents have done like whatever jobs they needed to. My dad's very entrepreneurial. My mum brought us up on her own. So she had like all the bazillion jobs that she needed to kind of keep food on the table. So I think that's been around me and probably influenced me. So it meant that it wasn't off the table. Whereas an ex-partner of mine, his parents have been in the same jobs for a very long time. I fully expect that he's going to be in the same job for a very long time. But then also very mindful when I'm talking to young adults that there are people who are people in their sphere that never had jobs. So, that's not necessarily in my echo chamber, but it was highlighted to me by a career advisor. So I think it's really interesting to think about all this stuff influences us, whether consciously or subconsciously. So I think I was always open to entrepreneurship.
So, I mean, as you're getting this started, I mean, obviously you have this inciting moment that kind of gives you that push forward. But I mean, do you have any doubts getting into this?
I don't think so. Well, I kind of had to do something. Right?
You didn't really have a choice, right? So
no, I mean, the universe said, you're doing something right now.
Yeah.
I'm the main earner in my family. I have 2 kids. My husband runs a charity that, doesn't give him a salary yet. So yeah, I just kind of had to crack on and do something. That's just like the universe aligned and I'm doing this now.
So you received the Entrepreneur of the Year Award from the 2024 Lincolnshire Marketing Awards, correct?
I did, yeah.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
What was that experience like for you?
Well, I'd been speaking at the event and it was great to find out that I was a finalist. I was so nervous because, you want to play it down and you're thinking like the Oscars.
Just play it cool, Emma, play it cool.
Yeah, play it cool. Like the competition was really high. I know that the 2 other finalists, Toby and Rebecca, well done, guys. They're stiff competition and they've done great things with their business. So I was just kind of like, just have my poker face. If I don't win, keep calm. But how lovely, one, to be a finalist amongst all the other businesses in the county, and then to win. It was just fabulous. My husband was with me at the awards and when they announced it, he went, whoop. And then everyone giggled. So that was kind of funny.
So what are you finding that you love most about running your own business?
I really love that I can choose who I work with. I think that's one of the great challenges when you are employed. Certainly I've had the experience that there are people I'd frankly rather spoon at my eyeballs than work with. But we don't get a choice because someone has said that, that's the client you're working with, or that's the account you're working with, or that's the industry you're working with. And I get to choose. That's
interesting, right? Because I think sometimes, particularly when you're just getting started, you have this tendency to want to just take whatever work is going to come to you. And so you actually don't choose. Was there a moment where did you start that from the beginning, or was there a moment you were like, wait a minute, I do get to choose here?
I think that wait a minute happens quite a lot. Like with when someone starts speaking to you about a project, and I think you just have to reroute yourself in, why am I doing this? What floats my boat? What fires me up? What do I feel like is a really, a good day in the office? Where do I feel I'm really going to add value? I don't want to, I don't want to be taking people's money if I don't know that I'm going to add value. And whilst I could do what I do with lots of different businesses and lots of different sectors, I've tended to find myself navigating to where it's work for good. And that really resonates with me. And I think actually the fact that, I do this volunteering in schools and I'm a school governor, just been in conversation about potentially joining a charity in some capacity. then it feels like, yeah, all that's congruent. Maybe I didn't realize it, but all that stuff has come together. So that's helped me. I think also perhaps being a little bit longer in the tooth, that being able to recognize that actually saying yes all the time can be counterproductive. And we probably all had those clients that, like I say, that, they're a massive time drain on our resources. And so we might take them on thinking, well, got to get the pounds in the bank, got to get the money in, got to get the money in. But actually, it's an absolute red herring. You've just lost money. It's taken all your efforts to focus on that client. And you probably knew it. You probably had some kind of red flag going off, some inner alarm going off, going, don't take it. Don't take it.
Don't do it. You mentioned like the charity work and those types of things and the other things you're volunteering for. Where does that come from?
I think probably having a fairly frugal background. So my mum brought us up on her own, and I'm glad, I got to see my dad, perhaps not as regularly as if my parents had been, or definitely not as regular as if my parents had stayed together. And we still have a great relationship. But there were times like we thought we were going to lose the house.
Yeah.
I think I was going into some exams, like a GCSE exam, and we thought we were going to lose the house. And it was only now, since becoming a parent, that I realised all the sacrifices that my mum made. There were times she didn't eat, and I didn't necessarily know that. But I think that's kind of instilled this in me, and maybe going to voluntary groups and seeing people helping out, just, maybe going through guiding, I don't know, but all these little things come along that influence you. I think it's the right thing to do. I think what goes around comes around invariably. I feel that. So, I've had some great work come to me because of my position and the things that I've done. And they said, well, we've seen the work that you're doing. Real social media lurkers, which always sounds for marketers like my dog ate my homework. Well, there's all the people that don't interact.
Well, it's true though, right?
It is true. But when you're a marketer and you're trying to say to a client, well, of course, they will have been people that have
people who
have seen this and not interacted. But some great work has come out of that. And I put stories out on social. I talk about the stuff that I'm doing. And maybe that will inspire others to do the same. I mean, one of my great things was I was talking at a school, and I'd had permission to say the business name to the young adults there. Because you have to get permission. Can you imagine the complaint otherwise? But the head team had said, that's fine. Anyway, then these young lads, we were all around a table, and they're like, so, what do you actually do then, miss? Which always makes me feel 150 years old. Miss, what? And I said, this is what I do. It's marketing strategy. This is what it means. And what's your company called, miss? I said, Business Bollox. And they're all going, that's sick, miss. Now, what I love, just going back to that point about we're influenced by what's around us, it's not everyone on that table is going to be a budding entrepreneur. But what it's done is for those that hadn't necessarily thought about it or thought it was stuffy or not for them, it's kind of opened their eyes to it, or at least opened their mind to it, so that they might consider it in the future. And I think that's really exciting, particularly for our young adults. And maybe it's a mindset thing, but what they're going to be doing when they've reached my ripe old age, probably hasn't been invented yet. How exciting is that? If you've got this open mindset, then that's going to stand you in great stead, whatever comes along. So I think that's kind of where that comes from.
Okay, so I love that, where that comes from. Again, the love of it is being able to choose what you do. What are you finding most challenging about it?
Cash flow is always the biggest thing when you've got a small business. I don't think that will be news to anyone who runs a small business. In fact, this morning at a breakfast networking, in fact, 2 people said that, I was like, how's things going? The balance of money in and out, clients taking too long to pay invoices, those kinds of things. Some of my clients, I do some work with universities, and at the moment, universities have been really struggling. We've seen redundancies, the model is changing and so on. And so finding someone who's got a payment card, if they want to set up LinkedIn ads, no one knows who's got a payment card. Yeah. So then, for example, we will take that on, but I will need a PO, so I know I can get that covered. But there can be a delay And so I'm effectively covering the cash flow for some clients, and that ends up with me. So I think that's the biggest headache, getting the invoices paid and balancing out and doing the forecasting. That's not my go-to, love.
Yeah.
But just so you don't wake up in the middle of the night panicking, you have to do that stuff.
Yeah.
So you don't panic, because then look, I've got a 6-month, 9-month, 12-month runway. So don't panic. Have a good night's sleep.
Is it just you in the business? Do you have anybody else working with you at all? Or
it's me. I have a fellow director who does some niche consultancy, and then I bring in specialists to do work.
Got it. No one on the back end side though?
Not permanently employed,
Yeah.
no. So it's working with VAs and so on. And again, it's using the specialist skills when we need it.
Got it. Well, let's talk about marketing here, right? So obviously you come to the business with marketing experience.
Mm-hmm.
What do you love most about marketing?
I love that it's the way that it connects business to customer. And I think too often it's seen as a one way, so company to customer. But actually, there's so much richness in listening to customers. If you spoke to anyone that I've lectured or spoken at an event, I'm always talking like this. Listen to your customer. All the answers to your questions are probably with your customer. And this is like this two-way street. So think about it more like a dual carriageway. So, you can share stuff with them. You can test out. You can validate offers. You can, all that stuff. You can go back and forth with customers. And I like to think it's more like a partnership. Because you're building a relationship. You're building that element of know, like, and trust, which is actually a phrase I find a bit hackneyed, but I think we all kind of know what it means.
Yeah.
But we're building that relationship with our customers such that they do trust us with their hard-earned cash, whether it's a product or a service. And so I think that having marketing as a conduit to that, it's like really what underpins, it was what moves your business from being maybe a hobby to being a business. Because we've actually got people wanting, coming to us. We're building that funnel. We actually, might be we're creating a wait list or, a brand new offering. There's quite often I'll speak to startups and they're like, well, I've got to fully create the thing and then take it to market. No, let's go validate it first. So actually that can be a massive reassurer that you're on the right lines, because for the kind of being able to validate and supports entrepreneurship, that's great as well. And I think there was a meme that went round, and it was a take on The Lion King, where Mufasa was standing on Pride Rock with Simba, and it was, everything that you can see, everything the sun touches is yours. It was like marketing.
Yeah.
Everything the sun touches is your domain. And I kind of get that feeling. I think that's a bit like how it is with marketing. It can have a really positive impact on the business. And conversely, rubbish marketing can have a massively negative impact on the business. And that's the stuff that boils my blood. I want it all to be good.
Well, what would be an example of rubbish marketing?
When it doesn't work, when it's not had the proper foundations. So there was a really interesting stat that I read, which was from the Chartered Institute of Marketing, that 75% of marketers are not trained. I was like, okay, that's interesting. Why is that? How's that? So then when you take a step back, and so if you look at let's say I go to a networking meeting with 100 people in the room, and there's however many people in there that might classify themselves as marketers, whether they're SEO, digital, email marketing. They might be a copywriter and consider themselves to be a marketer. They might be creative, etc. But they're all kind of in that marketing space. Very often they've come to it because they are experts in that thing. So somehow they've fallen into a role that has got them to, either they've come in as a junior or whatever, and they've become a real expert in, let's use SEO as an example. They are less likely to have done some formal training. Now, whether that's through university or through other channels, they're less likely to have done formal training other than perhaps a digital platform they're using. And for me, what that suggests, and this is only based on my experience, but it is supported by lots of people I've spoken to. Maybe I'm speaking to the wrong people, but lots of people have said either their lack of training meant that they didn't understand marketing strategy. They didn't understand the foundational work that they needed to do, didn't even know that was a thing that they needed to do. Or I've even given talks where people have said, oh yes, I understand this thing about market segmentation and understanding all that stuff. We did that when I did my degree. And then I ask, And have you used it since? No. Why not? Well, clients never give the time or the budget to do it. So then I'm like, right, hello, marketers. We need to be, one, educating our clients that they need to do this because this helps us understand their business. Or maybe it's a bit like when you sell your house, you get a house survey done that then becomes like the buyer's pack for anyone buying a house. It says, this is the state of the windows, floor, roof, etc. If you have that foundational work done on your business, then whether you're giving that pack out to a copywriter or a creative or an SEO expert or a digital marketer doing email, they understand your audience. You now understand your audience. So that if you're a leader in a business and you're going off to a networking meeting, you now know who you're targeting. You now know what you need to say. You now know the messages that you need to convey, the way in which you need to say it, the language that you're going to use. And because this stuff isn't done invariably, and that, when clients come to me, they're like, oh, our marketing isn't working, or they'll say, oh, our marketing's all bollocks. And then we'll dive into it and they'll have been doing the tactics. They'll have either had a campaign or putting stuff out. We're doing this organically. We're doing that. We did these flyers, blah, blah, blah. And we get into it and they're not targeting the most profitable segments. They're not targeting even the ones that have the pain that they think they need. And it's kind of like I was talking about this to someone the other day. Back in the day, I'm older enough that if you wanted to set up a business, like side hustles weren't really a thing. If you wanted to set up a business, you had to go to an actual bank manager. I'm not saying this is how it should be.
Right.
I'm just saying this is how it used to be. And this is why it used to be done. The old way of doing it was you'd go to a bank manager with a formal business plan. They would validate it and they would check it over and check that you hadn't missed out the fundamentals like, is there a market? Right? Now we have these lovely ideas and then we try and post-justify and post-find a market for our massive problem solver. But we have to make sure there is a market. So how many times have we come across people who are brilliant, like idealists that have come up with these things, coming up with new products and services, but there simply isn't a market for it. So they are trying their best to market the hell out of it, but there simply isn't a market for it. And that's what that marketers shouldn't be taking money to market that. They should be saying, well, I'm not sure there's a market here. Maybe there's a way to validate if there is or isn't. That would be good marketing. Just taking their money because you can provide a service, that's bad marketing. So for me, marketing should be doing the things that business owners want. Sometimes I think it's about the tough love. Saying, this sounds great. However, I'm not sure that this is going to fly. Yeah. Here's why. Here's the research. Yeah, this is the stuff that you need to be aware of. And if we're not doing that, then I think that's falling into bad marketing.
So when you think about your business and the things that you do to market yourself, what do you find most challenging about marketing?
I think being consistent, not in terms of my message, that is very consistent, but having the time to do it consistently. And there's, as you grow your business, there is, and this is why I think I'm able to talk about it and be really relatable, typically to the multi-hatted founders. So whilst I have other people that step in, I've still got to give them a brief. I've got to take myself out of speaking to clients, out of going to networking to give them the brief. And, I know I've got to do it. And so when am I going to do it? So that they can get on with doing what they need to. I think my biggest challenge other than that is delegation. And they kind of go a bit hand in hand. And that's been the same throughout my career. You spoke to someone probably from my first job, they would probably say that too. And again, I think this is very relatable for people who are growing businesses or who've grown businesses. When you can do something really well.
Yeah.
Right. Just give it here. I'll do it. But that doesn't help the other person. And one of the great interests for me has been working with more mentees. So helping them. And actually, I've got so much from that relationship as well, from being a mentor, because it's taught me things as well as them. And I think that, again, giving, and I've had value from that as well. So that's helping me to work on whether I will really, will I ever master that? Am I aware of it? Yes.
So you mentioned businesses do good type of clients that you like to work with, but is there a specific audience that you're trying to reach with your business?
The specific audiences are really more, it's more about the situation that they find themselves in. There are some loose segments that I work with, and that's to do with headcount / turnover. But it's more about the situation they find themselves in. So I'm really driven by the good marketing. So there will be times when I will meet, let's say, a company with 20 people, perhaps a couple of £1 million turnover, something like that, upwards. And they're like, either we've got a new product or service or want to go-to-market strategy, or, our landscape's changed a hell of a lot and we've not really taken a step back. We've just been in grow. And now we're like, actually, what are we going to be doing over the next 3 to 5 years? And then they'll get me in and we'll literally do that back to basics, looking at stuff like that. But there's also clients at the other end that are, how do we get to that point? Like I say, I call it the multi-hatted founder, where you might have a couple of people in the business, but everyone's kind of doing everything or doing at least 3 jobs. And how do you know what to do? How do you know what's going to be most impactful for your business right now? And there's so much information out there about what you should or shouldn't be doing, but it can feel like it's a little bit biased. So if I'm having a mentoring relationship with that client, I'm not taking any money whether they are doing this thing or that thing. I am purely giving them an unbiased, experienced view on, given their goals and the outcomes they're looking to achieve, what they should be doing right now, and then holding them accountable to make sure they get the thing done. And that's super, super valuable. So we kind of anywhere between that and that. There seems to be a bit of a collection of companies in healthcare and in education. And again, that goes back, I think, to my values. I've had quite a few clients come through who get the access to work payment. So perhaps where they have some additional needs and they are wanting to grow their business and they've been able to access that funding. But that's probably about as tight as it goes. I think I'm driven by helping others, and what that help is will depend on where they are on their journey. Does that answer that, Dave?
Yeah, no, it totally does. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So can you walk me through some of the things that you do to market your business to these audiences that you're trying to reach?
So a lot of it is word of mouth. So for example, a recent piece of mentoring work came through a web agency that I know from before I relocated. And they were talking to someone about a web project. And they were saying, well, we want to take on an apprentice, but actually we don't have any in-house marketing skills. And they said, I think you want to speak to Emma. And then that's kind of how that lovely relationship came about. I do quite a lot of public speaking. So people hear me talking and then go, well, hopefully they go, that lady's speaking sense. and then work invariably comes out of that. A lot of people actually will come up to me and go, do you know what? I've never heard anyone talk about this stuff before. You go to a marketing conference, what's pretty much everyone talking about? Tactics. They're talking about the tools, like you guys, you'll be talking about the tools. Here are tools that you can make your life more efficient, yada, yada. And some of the specifics around the tactics that unless, I'm not trying to big myself up, my head get bigger than my home office. But unless I'm talking at the events, maybe it's an echo chamber of the events I'm going to, but I invariably don't hear people talking about this stuff. Now, there's probably something around because people just want to know the tactics. Like, what's the latest thing I need to know about? What's going on with this algorithm? What's going on here? What's the best tool for this? What should I be doing with AI? Obviously comes up a lot. But regardless of all that, we need to do the foundational work.
Yeah.
I call it step 1.
Yeah.
Because it's like most of the marketing, we dive in about step 3 or 4. But what about step 1 when we don't do it?
Yeah.
And I liken it to, so I've got to have some foot surgery. So I was having this thought about, well, what do I do? I'm a bit worried about it. I don't think anyone particularly wants to have surgery. So how do we know that people are going to be looked after in surgery? And I kind of now ask this of an audience. So anyone's coming to my talks, don't say what I'm about to say that I want you to say. Because I want, anyway. But they will invariably say, oh, okay, well, we want surgeons and we want good equipment and we want lighting. Because I've got this the picture on a slide. No one ever says clean hands because it's so obvious. But it was only think how long medicine has been going on and bodies are being cut up and women delivering babies and medicine has been going on for a very, very, very long time. But it was only in the mid 1800s that someone said about how about we wash our hands in between patients? And here's the even more interesting thing. Based on my research, it only made it into the American medical guidelines in the 1980s. Why? Probably because it's so obvious. But we don't look at our market because it's so obvious.
Yeah.
We think we know it, but actually, have we properly investigated it? This gut feel gets us a pretty long way. And I'm not saying let's spend £1 billion on research. Kind of this stuff is good. And the tools, we can use AI, we can use a whole load of tools to give us market size information. Then if we know lifetime value, then we can put some values against a particular segment, or I try and de-bolloxize it for non-marketers, and I call it groups. But then we're able to say, well, look, this group's got this value. This group's got this value. And then when we look, if those two groups, let's say they've got the same value, but for one, we've got to go to 10 people, and then another, we've got to go to 100. Well, let's go to the 10 people, because that's fewer conversations and therefore more profitable. And depending on the model of the business, it might be actually that we want to go with 100 people because there's something about risk. But when we've got that data in front of us, then we know. Ta-da!
Yeah, it's really, I find a lot of the same things, right? Like I focus a lot on the foundational stuff too when I'm speaking to, and I think oftentimes we get into, here's what you do without asking I think important questions are, well, what are you trying to do and who you're trying to do that for? Because that's going to determine how you then use the tools, right? Because we all have access to the same tools, but how we use them is going to be different, right? Based on what it is that we need to do and accomplish and for whom, right? So yeah, I love that. I think maybe part of like social media is a problem here too, because like I think that makes it feel easy because it's so accessible.
Yep.
And it's very good. I keep saying this. It's very good at making you feel like you're doing something, right?
Right.
When you actually probably aren't doing anything meaningful, where you could be spending that energy someplace else and actually moving further, right? With your business. It's a very interesting thing.
I heard someone the other day saying, just because it's more efficient doesn't make it more effective.
Yeah.
And there's people I talk to, and it's all about social, it's all about digital. And then we take a step back and say, well, who you want to getting hold of? And it might, senior decision makers in yada, yada, yada sectors. Well, bizarrely, when you take a step back and look at what's going on, like everyone's inboxes are full. There's tactics, there's tools, there's subject lines, and make sure your content's right. But sometimes it can be old school ways.
Yeah.
I had a client that wanted to get in front of UK supermarkets. Hard. But knowing that market, knowing the people in those roles, we went and did a whole load of research on them. What did we do? We sent out 10 letters. Just 10. We had 3 replies and 1 got to contract. 10 letters.
Yeah.
So, we've got all these amazing tools, but sometimes we just need to take a step back and go, and is that tool the right tool for who we're going to connect with?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, somewhat similar story, but I think, sometimes we get so blinded by almost the digital landscape in many ways, right? Where it feels like it's easy to do things, but you forget that there's people on the other end of that. Like I can remember a time where I had someone was working for me and we were trying to connect with somebody in the company to get something done. And I was like following up on that. And they were like, oh, yeah, well, I sent that email. I was like, well, they sit right over there. Did you walk over there and have a conversation? That might be easier, right? Like we get blinded by that sometimes, right? So it's point well taken. So, you mentioned consistency and that being a challenge, right? For your own stuff. What do you do to actually, or how do you approach actually getting things done when it comes to the marketing pieces that you need to do?
Yeah, I call that getting shit done.
That's a good name.
So one, I block out time in the calendar. Because otherwise it will fill up with meetings and so on. So I have regular blocks of GSDs in my calendar, and I've had done that for a long time. And particularly like this quarter is being really busy for me. So I've got, I have to protect that time to do stuff. I also, when I'm working on my business, not just in my business. So the GSDs, it tends to be working in the business stuff. On my business, I also have slots of time. So I have slots of time making sure I'm doing new business staff, prospecting staff, following up with proposals, those kinds of things. I have lots of time for that as well. Again, got to protect it. If it's not in my calendar, it ain't happening. But also I work with a accountability coach to make sure that I'm prioritizing the right things to do for what I'm looking to achieve. And we have goals like for the quarter and the year, but sometimes it's just like, look at my workload. What am I doing this week? What is going to tangibly move me forward? And I think there's something about the overwhelm of, in fact, someone else spoke to the other day. Oh, I've got to do my website. And that feels like a big thing because it's like a whole lot of pages and I've got to do content and blah, blah, blah. And they got a content management system, whatever else. They're like, what if you just did one page this week? Would that, how would you feel at the end of the week if you managed to get that one page done? Brilliant. Okay, go do one page. So if it's the only thing that you can actually feasibly get done because you're, doing the work or you're away or your kid's sick or when you have school holidays, that has an impact and so on. And do the page, because over the weeks, let's say you've got 20 pages on your website, in 20 weeks, you have done it. But you'll probably have procrastinated 20 weeks and still not done it if you see it as a whole.
Yeah.
What was it? There's a book like Eat the Frog.
Yeah.
I love that. But that potentially would be do the whole website. I'm just like, just take some little nibbles and breaking it down into manageable chunks that feel less scary. And then it feels like a thing that you can actually just get done. You got a half hour, go get it done. I love the Pomodoro technique. I use that all the time. So
what's that one?
So that's where you have 25 minutes focus time.
Okay.
And then you have 5 minutes off.
Yep.
So if I've got stuff that I really know I need to do, I'm going to have 25 minutes real hard focus. And then I'm going to go off and look at social, make a cup of tea or, catch up with my family. And that's really useful because I'll block out some of those slots to get, get stuff done.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious when you start thinking about, so let's get into some of like the tactical things a bit here, but so like on social, do you have like a primary social channel? Are you in multiple places? Like how do you kind of work that?
I'm mainly on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And I'd say I'm active on LinkedIn. I have channels on other platforms, but really I'm not active on them. If it's not a personal introduction, my work comes from LinkedIn. Just because it's where the B2Bs are. And I love the platform. I love interacting with people. I love seeing what people are up to. I love how more personal it's become since lockdown. It feels like it really took a step forward from, you still get the people going, this is a business platform. Okay, yes, but we're in business and we're still human beings.
And we're people, right? Yes, yeah.
So, and especially for early career marketers, and they're like, but that post about someone's birthday just got the most engagement. It's like, well, because people can relate to that. Everyone has a birthday. And, and that's a nice thing to see. And you're like, oh, congratulations. So that can be a great way to, one, have to break the grind of content and all that kind of stuff. Because, people buy from people and we're real actual human beings. And, why did that dog post do so well? Because it's about a dog. So, so now you start to see companies that have, they'll bring their dogs into work and then they'll say, oh, and this is Chief Morale Officer. And those posts do brilliantly. In fact, my cat needs to get in a few more of my posts with a whole cat dog war going on. Yeah, so LinkedIn for me is the best one. I find because my clients are in B2B, we'll invariably be getting them to embrace LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I'm always surprised by people who aren't active on LinkedIn when their work is B2B. Like it's kind of, even if you, use your free account, you can still do a lot of understanding your market. I know that's kind of my core, but you can still do a lot of understanding your market just with the free version.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, for you, do you feel a need to, and I feel like this might be different, right? But do you feel a need to be on every channel?
I think I used to, maybe early days. And now I'm comfortable not being on every channel. And you'll probably find that every small I influencer is going to say something different. But I just think be where your audience is and go be there and go be consistent. And unless, if you have a social media manager, that is, that's their job to be your business or your personal, depending, but you out on socials, that's their job. Let them go do that. But if you're juggling a bucket load, focus on what's going to be most impactful for your audience. That's why you need to understand your audience inside and out. And when you've done that foundational work on understanding your market, you then know, actually, my audience loves video, or they love stats, or they love this, they like this style of language. I need to be tagging this on my posts, or I need to be using this hashtag, or I need to be in these groups. Again, all the answers. In fact, I do have a crystal ball in my office, because I talk about it kind of like, it's like the crystal ball of marketing. When you do this stuff, I should have put my scarf over my head and sort of like, how do I do marketing, Emma? Well, that's how you do it. You've got to know the stuff. You've got to know your audience, and then the answers come. And if you don't have the answers, at least now you know what you need to go and find out. So, if they're on LinkedIn, be on LinkedIn. If they're on Facebook, so have in my network people who have more B2C companies. That's more Facebook. Very visual businesses might be more on the visual platforms like Instagram and TikTok. I heard a lovely story the other day about a financial advisor who's absolutely going great guns on TikTok. And he's there with a flip chart and he's explaining stuff to his audience. But who would ever thought that TikTok would be the place for a financial advisor?
Yeah.
Now, that could be the place to go. Maybe that's the place to go if you're particularly if you're doing educational content. So I've got a couple of clients who I'm saying, I think you guys need to get on TikTok because of the stuff that you're putting out. Great on LinkedIn, but also you could get a really interesting following on TikTok. And we've done that based on research. So, those right at the very beginning of our conversation, we're talking about customer. So we've heard it back from customer. Where do you guys hang out? What content? What platforms do you use? Where do you spend your time? Oh, this and that. Okay, makes note.
Yeah.
Okay, so this stuff comes from your customers. Oh, doesn't feel like rocket science. Although I did meet a rocket scientist the other day, and that was quite exciting.
Where does he market?
Literally are. Yeah, exactly. Well, it's Andromeda.
What role does email marketing play in your business?
It's really important because it's a list that I own. I've heard lots of stories about people who are focused on, let's say, LinkedIn or Meta or whatever, and something's happened. Their account gets locked. That's it. You're out, you're blown out the water. But if you have an email list, then that's yours. And there are tools like yours, then, you can then use that and harness that and get the stats, actually look at what you're doing. Well, I heard the other day someone, we're just sending them out of our Outlook. Oh my God. How do you know, who's interacting with what at what point? What a wasted opportunity.
Yeah.
So email is super, super important. I can't necessarily see that changing in the short term. I think we always have to have a bit of a lens about what's going on, but what's happening with all the tools is there's all these innovations going on. And I think there's some pros and cons with things like AI. We don't want to have all our content all sounding the same.
Right.
But in terms of getting you over that blank page-itis, I think it can be really, really good. There are people where writing is not their skill set.
Right.
Again, that can get them past that. And then you go, heck, that's not how I write. and then you've got something to put more into your language. Yep. Very important to do that because we're all going, oh my God, there's one, if there's hashtags and asterisks all over it and emoticons, and then it's been ChatGPT. But definitely, I think email has to be part of your strategy, unless your audience doesn't have email. So my mother-in-law, for example, she lives with us. She has email. She's super digital. But the people that she speaks to in the village, not so much. But that is, I would say, a small and reducing market.
Yeah.
I think most people have access to email. We have it on our devices. I can get my emails on my Apple Watch. Heck, there's a whole other issue about how connected we are and can we turn off. But you can just take your gadgets off.
Yeah.
Turn them off. Until we start getting implants in our retinas, we can probably still distance ourselves, but it is, we think about where your audience is, use the tools that connect with them, find ways to make it easy for yourself and for them to interact with you, and be in control of your data. Definitely.
What do you do to move people from social to those owned properties? What ways do you kind of grow that list?
It's in having the conversation. So I have, for example, I run some quizzes. So people can find, let's say I've spoken at an event. I have a little QR code at the end. That's how people then come into my quiz. And I say, yes, that's going to put you into my email ecosystem. You can always unsubscribe, but they get value from the quiz. So that then brings them into my ecosystem. They get a lovely hello, thank you. From doing the quiz, they get value from that, and they can always unsubscribe straight away. But invariably, people like that stuff. I think if they are liking me, there's a particular style of the brand, the business name kind of says it all. So I think people are there for a particular style of content. All my content is written as if you're having a conversation with me. It's not written in boring business.
Yeah.
In fact, you know what? I don't know if you can see it, I have Lord Business from the Lego movie on top of my monitor as a reminder, don't be Lord Business.
That's amazing.
Because that's just not how people speak. But I have clients who write, seriously, did someone from the 1800s write this copy? This is not how real life people talk.
It's funny, right? Because I feel like there's a switch in people sometimes, right? Particularly when you're just not comfortable with marketing, right? You don't really understand it. So you feel like you're putting on all the hats you got to wear. Now I'm putting on the marketing hat, and now I need to talk like this because I'm marketing, right? And so you end up doing these things that you're like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Right? Just pretend you're in front of somebody and you're talking to them, right?
It's kind of
now, if you're talking to them when you're we've got bigger problems, right?
If you're talking like Dickens in a conversation, big problem. I heard something the other day about, what if you were having a conversation and what if you recorded that conversation and took the transcript and ran it through an AI to pull out, what was the situation? What was the problem? Then suddenly you've created some content there that could become a case study, anonymized, of course, but it starts feeding into it. So you can be present in the conversation, actually be having a proper, it could be a, what do you call it, discovery call kind of conversation. Yeah. And someone's explaining their challenges and you're like, okay, and you're in it and you're helping them. And obviously you've got their permission and explain why you're recording it. And I'm just going to use this as anonymized content for case studies and so on. So use your real life language. And as you're using that transcript and seeing how people are actually talking, it's a reminder. Dickens doesn't live here anymore. Yeah, maybe that should be a post-it note on people who write Dickens need a little post-it on the corner of their screen going, nope.
I want to shift us a little bit to think about just when you're working with clients and those types of things. And so I feel like we often try to jump ahead. We talked earlier about just the tactics and without actually focusing on the fundamental things. And I think also as humans, right, we tend to overcomplicate things too, right? Are there any particular areas for you that you see business owners that's really just really making things too complicated on themselves when it comes to marketing?
All the time. Hang on. I'm kind of feeling like a rolls up sleeves moment.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, uh-oh. All the time. I think we can get really pickled as business owners. Yeah, get really pickled as business owners about what we think we should be doing is one thing. And that's kind of, it feels like you got that devil and angel on your shoulders telling you, and you probably got your Dickensian brain saying, speak like this. And then you've got someone else saying, just speak like a normal human being. But I think the word just, and I think if you went through the transcript of this, I know I use the word just a lot. Just should be banned. So let's just get this out. Let's just send that email. Let's just. That just is the barrier to the thinking. So I call it think before things. Because that one is quite memorable because the words are similar. But think before you do the things. So if we just took a pause and thought about something just for a little while longer, I'm not saying procrastinate 2 weeks, but if we just spend a little bit of time, then we do so much better. I mean, in emails, for example, the thing that really bakes my noodle is the amount of time that people will spend on the content of the email and then do kind of some throwaway subject line.
Yeah.
But what is the job to do of that subject line? That's to get someone to open the email. Now, if you don't spend the time on the subject line, no one is ever going to see your carefully crafted content. So, let's just get it out. And this is, I see this time and time again, concentrating on the copy and the email. I'm not saying don't, but also give the subject line the same attention because it has a job to do. Just like if you're sending something in the post, right? Then if you're putting it through a franking machine, you'd make sure there was something nice on the franking machine, or you would choose a nice stamp, or you'd have nice stationery because you want it to look like something that someone wants to engage with. Why do shops have amazing windows? Because the job to do is to entice you into the shop. So what I say to people is, this is the stuff we're doing now. People have heard of the 80-20 rule. Why are we just jumping in and doing the 20 without doing the 80? And maybe it doesn't need to be that ratio of percentage, but we certainly need to do some thinking. And what I'll do is I'll give a real life example. Like if we do this now, if we jump in with this right now, what's the outcome likely to be? And how is it different from the outcome that we're after? So the outcome is we've possibly sent something out or created something that doesn't meet the goals that we have for it. It's probably we've invested time and money. But if we just put another, half day even, it doesn't have to be that much, into properly thinking it through, then we haven't wasted. Let's say it was 10 days, right? We haven't wasted that 10 days for the want of a half day. It's like, would you go out and do a video shoot, for example, without planning what you were going to do? Well, no, you wouldn't. You'd plan your shots. You'd work with your videographer. You would have booked the spaces. You'll have had the people that you're going to interview. You'll have the kit and you'll have done the planning. If you don't do the planning, then you're going to spend 3 times as much time because you haven't got it all planned out. You're going to have to go there, go there, go there, go back there because you forgot to get that shot that you meant to get. You didn't do the B-roll, et cetera, et cetera. And so by putting it in real life stories, you can say, well, look, I'm going to just say we need to halt it here because we're going to go down the wrong route. We're not going to get what we want. And this is, effectively, this is why you've asked me to do this stuff. And what I want to do with those early career marketers is give them the confidence to press that pause button because they will have so much pressure from everyone around them that we just got to get this done.
Yeah.
It's Friday afternoon. We're just going to get this thing out. But there's no point sending it on Friday afternoon. Let's do it on Monday.
Yeah.
Or actually there's, the emails, actually there's a whole load of research around the weekend now being a really good time to get hold of particular segments, which never was the case before. And if you weren't aware of the research in your segment, then you wouldn't know that. And you'd be just going back to something that you heard 5 years ago that says, well, you only send out emails between 10 and 2 on a Tuesday to Thursday. Yeah, well, that was pre-pandemic and the world's moved on and your audience has moved on and they're interacting with their emails in different ways, as an example. But that's why we need to do that research. And then they're like, maybe I've just battered them round the head with reasons why. But invariably, they'll go with it. And then we see the positives that come out of it.
It's really a delicate balance between that, what you're saying, right, of getting the shit done, right, and doing it, but then also being thoughtful enough about it so it's meaningful, right, and not getting in that analysis paralysis area as well and overthinking, right? Like you've got to really, really find that sweet spot. We're getting closer to our time here, so I need to ask you this. So this actually I saw come up on your LinkedIn feed as we're connected there, and so what I want to know from you is, what is the marketing superpower that most small businesses don't know about?
It is understanding your market because they just think marketing is the tactics. So if you ask people you've got a room of people in small businesses, and hey, small businesses are still quite big businesses. And you ask them what's marketing, and they're just going to reel off a whole load of tactics. And that's the visible chunk of marketing. but they won't see the research. They won't see the pricing strategy. They won't see the budgeting. They won't see the prioritization. They won't see all that stuff. And that is equally as important. There's no point doing that stuff if you're not going to do the tactics, but equally you need to do that stuff before. And so that's the stuff I talk about, is understanding that is the thing that's going to allow your marketing to sort of put its pants on the outside and get a cape and wear an eye mask, because that's the kind of the power pose for your marketing, is having done that research and understanding the market. There's a really simple way for people to remember this, and it's called marketing, not social mediaing. It's called marketing, because you have to understand your market first, and then the tactic will come out of it once you know your market.
Well, friend, let's recap some items from that discussion. Number 1, understand your market before anything else. Emma stresses that marketing without understanding your audience is like building on quicksand. Before you dive into tactics like social media or email, do the foundational work. Segment your audience, validate their needs, and define what success looks like. Number 2, block time to get shit done. One of Emma's practical tips is scheduling GSD time on your calendar to focus on marketing execution. Whether it's batching content, writing emails, or briefing collaborators, setting aside focused time helps you avoid the overwhelm and build momentum. Number 3, focus your energy where your audience actually is. You don't need to be on every channel. Emma primarily uses LinkedIn because that's where her B2B audience hangs out. So know where your people are and show up consistently there. It's better to go deep on one platform than spread yourself thin across 5. Here's your action item for today. Take a moment to evaluate your next email before you send it. What's the subject line? And does it do the job of getting someone to open it? If you're using Constant Contact, try our AI-powered subject line suggestions to test a few variations and see what resonates. It could be the difference between being opened or ignored. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Be a Marketer podcast. Please take a moment to leave us a review. Just go to ratethispodcast.com/BAM. Your honest feedback will help other small business marketers like yourself find the show. That's ratethispodcast.com/BAM. Well, friend, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and continued success to you and your business.